Welcome to Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio, bringing you insights and strategies to help you create a magnificent and fulfilling second half of life. Here's your host, certified professional retirement coach and best-selling author, Dr. Dorian Mintzer.
I want to welcome everybody today on my fourth Tuesday Revolutionize Your Retirement interview with expert series to help you create a fulfilling second half of life. I'm Dorian Mintzer, your host and owner of Revolutionize Retirement. So let me just tell you a little about Sallie. Sallie Felton has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox News affiliates. She's president of Sallie Felton LLC. She's a professional life coach, a former international radio show talk host, a best-selling author, facilitator, international speaker, and former hypnotherapist and deep imagery therapist. And she's helped thousands of people overcome limiting beliefs that held them back from achieving goals and living more fulfilling and authentic lives. She's co-authored books with Stephen Covey, Deepak Chopra, Dr. John Gray, Les Brown, and other great thought leaders of our time. Her number one Amazon bestseller is called If I'm So Smart, Why Can't I Get Rid of This Clutter? I think an issue that many of us deal with. In this practical guide, she gives readers the practical tools they need to get organized. And as a personal challenge and impetus for the book, she decluttered her entire house for 1 full year. In this book, she shares her own private stories of her wins and struggles with dealing with 3 types of clutter that we all have, which include mental, emotional, and of course, physical clutter. And as she said, I put myself out there, I wore my heart on my sleeve, and it doesn't get any more honest than that. But her book's not a simple how-to book. Today, in the book, Sallie goes into the why and uncovers the hidden reasons why it can be so hard to get clutter-free and how to stay that way. So Sallie, I'm so delighted to have you with us, and let's begin maybe by telling us a little of whatever made you decide to declutter your house. And it's an undertaking. It took a whole year.
Daunting feat.
It's really
Thank you, Dory, for having me. I'm really pleased to be here and with your listeners. As I have a radio talk show called A Fresh Start with Sallie Felton, and it was during the time of around New Year's that people would call in and say, I really want to have more peace, more clarity, more balance in my life. I really want to have a tidy house. I want my office to not be cluttered. And I've been hearing this for over 7 years. And I guess, Dory, I just threw the gauntlet down. And I said, hey, I'm stepping up to the plate here. I'm going to show you how you can do this without spending every waking hour struggling with this, without saying, okay, I have to spend 3 weekends every single month to do this task. No, you don't. So it was funny. As I threw it out there, I went, oh my gosh, what did you just make yourself accountable to? And I said, no, I'm going to do this. So what I did was I created a blog. And in my blog, I wrote what I was doing, how I was even going to attack this feat, how seasons are so important when you begin to strategize how you're going to declutter your house. For example, I live in New England. I am not going to be up in our garage attic mid-January. I'm sorry. I love the cold, but that's ridiculous. So you plan what you can do when, barring the weather around you. So that's how I started. And I was, as I said, I wore this right on my sleeve. I told you every day what I was doing, what my goal was, how I was doing it, how much time I allotted or not enough, and what I was really procrastinating on, what I did not want to do, and how I pushed through that. It wasn't easy, but the one thing that I knew I wasn't going to do was to say, okay, today is January 1st. By the 1st of April, I will have completely cleared out my house. That is just so wrong. Unless you live in a one-bedroom apartment, you could do that. But I have 12 rooms, a basement, and a garage, and a potting shed. That's not happening. And I went through every single closet, drawer, hubby, you name it, every file, every single file in our house, and all the books. I did everything. And yeah, a publisher picked up on this blog, and that's how this book was conceived.
Did you have time for other things in your life when you were doing all this?
I did. Because what I didn't do was to say, I'm going to spend 1 hour doing this every single day. I didn't do that. What I did was I concentrated on which rooms I wanted to attack first. So I actually started with one of my kids' rooms. And all my kids are grown and out and living in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So what I did was go into their room and dispose of things that I thought they wouldn't want. But what I did first was I checked in with them. And I think as a mother, we tend to hold on to more because of the memories, watching them grow up. And I can tell you that my eldest son said, Mom, toss it. Just get rid of it. And I'm going, did that in second grade. So I found myself thinking to that emotional part. And then I said, okay, what part of your remembering a particular child do you want to keep? You can't keep everything. So just as I always ask the kids, pick out your favorite, that's what I was doing. And then what I did was release it. And I recycled a lot of it. And some of the old trophies that they didn't want, I donated them to Make-A-Wish. And what I did was in every one of my blogs, I put where you can donate your items. And instead of filling up the landfill, which we all seem to be great at doing, I wasn't going there. I just refused to put anything in landfill. So I recycled 99% of it. And it's all in the book too, Dory. Absolutely where I donated, the list of national organizations, one of the best friends you'll ever have if you want to just donate for free, used, not totally well-worn item. It's called Free, F-R, Cycle, C-Y-C-L-E .org. And it is an international organization. You tell where you're located. You email with those particular people in the surrounding areas where you live, and you say what you want to donate, and it's for free, and they will come and pick it up.
It sounds like a great resource.
For me, I needed to make a connection, emotional connection, if I was giving away emotional things. For example, I had 33 books of my father. He was a navigator on many of the transatlantic races. I don't need 33 celestial navigational books. One is fine. 33 doesn't make it. So I put it out there. And one man said, could I come and choose 12? And I said, of course you could, but my curiosity is saying, what are you doing with them? He's building a vessel, and he's building this vessel for training cadets. and he wanted those in the library. Now that's a win-win. That's a win-win. My dad would be thrilled to know those books were going there. And for me, that's what I needed to do, even with old costume jewelry.
Mm-hmm.
Some I took to the local school for their theatrical production.
Donna from Texas, let me just interrupt for a second. She commented, Ellen St. James, an author from Living the Simple Life, recommends that people take photos of treasured possessions before getting rid of them. And that way, because photos take up a lot less space than possessions.
Exactly.
Do you find that too? Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because what I hear a lot, people will say, I can't give this away. My aunt gave it to me, and it would be totally disrespectful if I gave it to somebody else. That would be rude. How's it like living in the bottom of your drawer? You don't like it, and yet you feel an obligation to have it.
But that leads me to a question. Oh, go ahead, and then I have a question for you. Go ahead.
I had that happen to me numerous times. So what I did was I took a picture of the item and I emailed it to various people that I thought might really like it. Family, friends. Sure enough, there was always one person that was more than delighted to have it. Again, that's a win-win. That's a win-win.
So how do you define clutter? I just want to mention, I have more questions, but I want to have you be able to share some of what you say too. And I know you talk about 3 types of clutter. So can you share what is clutter? And because it's different for each person.
Let's go through my PowerPoint and we will touch just on each one of those.
Great.
Clutter is not just the physical stuff. It's old ideas, toxic relationships, and bad habits. Clutter is anything that does not support your better self. The next slide says, let's face it, we all have clutter to some degree or another. It's how we deal with the clutter that makes the difference between conquering your clutter and allowing your clutter to conquer you. Next slide. I'm going to skip this particular slide and go to the next because Dory has asked me specifically, what are the 3 types of clutter? There's mental clutter. That's the to-do list. It's the personal and professional list. For example, mental clutter is the unfocused, disorganized, overwhelmed, and unmotivated. Physical clutter. That's the environment, the furniture. What about all those knickknacks around your house? And let's talk about digital clutter, technology, and I don't know about you, but I've been filing this morning. That's called paper clutter. Emotional clutter is their kissing cousin. It's of the heart. It's unresolved issues. It's relationships. It's worry. It's change. And it's letting go. Next slide. How does clutter affect you? With mental clutter, you become unfocused, disorganized, overwhelmed, unmotivated. How does physical clutter affect you? You become stuck. You're alone. Some feel shameful or guilty with all the clutter around them. They feel unhealthy and they're fatigued. How about emotional? Some feel depressed, sad, anxious, and can't let go. Does that help for you to understand some of that, Dory?
I think that's helpful, and it does tie in, well, a question first, and then I want to integrate a few of the questions from our listeners.
Sure.
How, from your experience, does clutter and saving things differ from this problem we keep hearing about of hoarding? How do you differentiate that? Hoarding, I guess, is the physical part, although my hunch is that hoarders maybe are just an extension of a continuum of what all of us can be with all these other three parts. But I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
My opinion, someone could collect books, someone could collect shoes, someone could collect Hummel. They're usually one or two items of specific want. Hoarding is a feeling, it's psychological, and it's emotional, that they feel they just can't get enough. And it usually stems from loss or abuse, but it definitely needs professional help. Hoarders usually try to insulate themselves by their possession. Because once people see that you can't even get into their house, the hoarder feels alone. They feel alone. And usually there is some emotional trauma that has occurred for them to become hoarders. It also can be financial as well, that this person just feels I need 46 purses because when one of them goes, I have a backup. My question would be, could you live with a dozen? Could you live with 36 rather than 45? So it's always asking, are you okay with reducing?
I like that approach, Sallie, too, because you're saying, just even in your examples, you're not saying it's an all or none. You're saying reducing so that it gives somebody control, whether one is a hoarder or a collector or family thing. You have this nice, realistic way of a little bit at a time. And I just want to underscore that. I think that's really...
Yeah, we have to be gentle with ourselves. I personally have a real hard time watching hoarders. Somebody come in with a dumpster, and I look at all these burly guys, and there was shovel. And how is that individual processing this? I hope that this TV producer has a lot of hours lined up for these individuals. Because, boy, you are stripping them naked. And we don't have to do that. One item at a time. And I've got tons of tricks that I can share with you.
That leads into a question Kathy from Indiana has, which is, what tips can you give? I think it's related to it, but what she asks is, what tips can you give for accepting we can't keep everything, to free ourselves to let go?
You have to make a goal. What is it you want? Do you want a cleaner closet? Do you want to get another pair of shoes, but you can't fit it in the closet? Do you want to have a paperless environment in your office? What is it that you are needing or wanting? That's the first thing. For me, I wanted simplification. I was tired of all the extra stuff. And my house by no means is cluttered. But you don't have to live in clutter to feel clutter. I wanted more room, more space. So here's a trick when it comes to stuff in your closet. Hang all of your items on the hanger in one direction. all of them. In one direction, have your coat hangers lined up. Every time you wear something, reverse the direction of your coat hangers. It will be mind-boggling to see how few items you wear. It's daunting. It's daunting. It was a real eye-opener because I looked at some of the things and I thought, wow, that's been there on the hanger for 2 years and I have not worn it. That was a no-brainer. And I said, out it goes. And part of me, that little voice on the left shoulder is going, oh, wait a minute, wait. I might have an occasion to wear it. Really? Huh. Let's think about that. Then, what about the items that still have the sales tag? Oh, but you got it on sale. You need money on this. And it's still sitting there 2 years later. I took those to a consignment store with the tag still on it. And I received in 1 year a check for $350. I was ruthless, Dory. I took shoes, I took shirts, I took sweaters, and I took them to a consignment store. And it was pretty fun to think, oh, I've got a little nest egg. What am I going to do with it? I don't know, but isn't it fun to watch it grow? If you have items like furniture and you want some money for it, look at those consignment stores. Also, post items at local universities, especially in August. Kids are coming to school, and they're always looking to get stuff. Either free or, who knows, $5 for couch, $10 for couch, $20 for couch. They're going to need some things. And I found that to be really helpful. Another trick is when you are going through or you are dealing with, whether it's clothing or book, you want to have 3 boxes. One box says, I love it. The next box says, do I need it? The next box is going to have items that are either torn, ragged, or in disrepair. The I love it, you have 3 seconds to make this decision. We are not spending minutes analyzing where and when we're going to wear it 2 years from now. If you want to declutter, you have to make yourself accountable. So you've got 3 seconds. I love it. That's an easy one. Do I need it? Wow. I'm looking here and I have 6 pair of black pants. Could I get rid of 1? Could I get rid of 2? 1 is better than none. And I have a philosophy that for every item you bring into the house, you need to dispose or donate of 2 of the same item. You are decluttering. I have a box by the back door. I will either take it to a consignment store or Goodwill, Salvation Army, Savers, whatever. But I will always keep that going.
I have a couple of... Oh,
go ahead.
Yep. I have a few questions here that relate to the physical clutter but
Sure.
also of a variation of sentimental. So I wanted to incorporate that. And then as you go ahead, I also have questions about more of the mental and the emotional clutter. But two of the questions, one, the person hasn't, oh wait, and then there's some stuff about kind of paper clutter. But I have a question from Sheila and also Mary from Hopewell and from Sebastopol, California. And both are somewhat related. So one question is, how do you deal with cleaning out family stuff that belongs to a spouse who's overwhelmed with dealing with cleaning out multi-generations of things from his family that he's inherited? And she wants to support him. So that's one. And let me ask the other one at the same time, and maybe you can incorporate it. It's a question from Sheila, who says that both of her parents had died in the last 2 years, and she's the executor. So she's having to clear out their house. So she gets to dispose of, and needs to dispose of the unused, unneeded. But previously she had the experience of inheriting some totally quote unquote useless items from her grandparents, which probably would have been thrown out when they died, but she decided to keep them and then recently discovered that they meant so much to her. And so this is separate from just the clothes in the closet, but what about the sentimental things? And she asked, do you have any advice for techniques for weighing which or what kind of items are likely to be meaningful in the future, either to her or her siblings? She happens not to have any children, but so these are the more sentimental rather than the clothes. Do you have some tips on how to, to deal with that?
Do. I feel where they're all coming from. I had to do the same thing. Let's talk about what you inherit, especially if it's your spouse. Many times men don't want to have to deal with that. It is just exhausting. And yet, on the other hand, there are men that would say, I don't even want any of it. Let's get the dumpster in here and chuck. Out of sight, out of mind. I understand that. And for some people, if that's what they need to do, okay, that's what they need to do. But this path of inheriting things, personally, I had my husband's parent items that he chose stored in my living room for 4 years because we didn't know what to do with them. And I thought, I can't believe I just got rid of all my parents' things. And within 4 months, I now have all my husband's things. So what we did, we were gentle with ourselves. Grieving the loss of parents is hard enough. There's a transition in itself. So be kind to yourself. Do a small amount. For example, start with something that is less daunting to you. Start with books. Start with kitchen items. That's what we did. We started with the less mundane thing. We left the emotional, and by emotional, silver, jewelry, photo album, painting, and small knickknacks that we each loved. We waited to deal with those. This past story, and I'm one of 5 sisters, this to disperse everything was over a 2-year process. It was tiring, but we did it the way we wanted to do it. And when it came to furniture, that was my husband's parents. We asked our kids which pieces they might like. If they didn't, we asked other members of the family, cousins, and asked them what they might like. If nobody wanted it, and if we knew we didn't want it, then we auctioned it off. That's one way. When it comes to saying, I am so overwhelmed, I can't do this right now, but I may like it later. I think you do go through a grieving process. You go through an enormous burden of having to mentally and physically deal with each one of these items that you're overloaded. And I can totally understand when someone months later goes back and revisit some of those emotional items to say, wow, I really connect with this right now. That's okay. But there may be other items that you don't connect with. And see who you might know that would cherish this. Cherish this. I gave a lot of books to nursing homes. I gave a lot of art books to schools. Libraries need books for their annual book sale. My parents' clothes I gave to Salvation Army. If I knew none of our kids wanted any item. Now it's interesting because my eldest son wanted dad's pajamas. I thought that was fascinating. He wanted those pajamas because that's what he remembered. And another one wanted dad's old sock because that's what he remembered. So many times it's what we least expect somebody to want that they actually do. I hope that answers some of the question.
I think it does, and people can ask more as they think about it and have more questions to ask. I wonder, and I know you think you're incorporating some of the tips that you have from the slides, but I always love to integrate the questions from people on the call too. And this is a slightly different one, but one of the earlier questions was how to handle paper, particularly here we are, many of us professionals or many of us have big interests, and there's that sense we want to collect worthwhile articles from newspapers and magazines. And what approach, the question is, can be taken to get control over the amount to collect in the first place? And then what kind of do you recommend in relation to either file space or time spent on collecting or scanning or photocopying? I don't know if it's a she or a he actually from the question because there's no name with it, but just
That's okay.
Wondering what approach you would suggest that would be, what kind of mindset and approach would be most helpful with dealing with it, both taking care of it, I guess, once it's out of control, but also in a preventative way.
I will answer that in full. But I think it would help. Let's go to slide number 5. How do you remove it? Mental clutter. To remove mental clutter, you need to learn to delegate. You need to say no, and you need to make small, doable lists. With physical clutter, you keep only what you really love. You gotta scale down. You gotta donate to friends, family, eBay, Craigslist, freecycle.org, and emotional clutter. How do you remove it? You write a letter to that person, you email, you talk, you forgive, and you let go. Somebody said, well, how do I make peace if that person's no longer around? Ceremoniously, you write a letter, and you burn it outside and you watch it go into the universe. That's one way. Slide 6. The secret of SMART goals. And this is paramount to remove any clutter you have, especially paper clutter. You have to have SMART goals. SMART is an acronym. S is simple and specific. M is make it measurable. A is attainable. R is realistic. And T is time oriented. Next slide. So how do you get started? You have to commit to a date and a time. Write it in your calendar, in your iPhone, wherever. Just as you never cancel your annual with your physician, you're not going to cancel out on yourself. You can't do it. You've got to stand up and be accountable. Select the area you wish to declutter. If it's your office or your papers, start there. Use the SMART goal. Start small. This is not going to be overwhelming because you won't continue if it's overwhelming. 15 minutes, 30 minutes. If you can't do 15, 5. No distraction. You're not going to the bathroom. You're not going to eat your way through this. You're not going to answer the phones. You're not going to answer the doorbell. Absolutely no distractions. But music is allowed. Use the 3-second rule. Do I love it? Do I need it? Is it useful? Stop after 10 or 30 minutes. You want to leave feeling success. You don't want to leave feeling down. How do you stay motivated? Slide 8. Make the plans for the next round. Limit time of decluttering. Use the timer, CD, or a friend for accountability. Do not use family members. They cut you too much slack. Leave decluttering feeling successful and celebrate your success. Do something for yourself. For me, I would buy myself flowers. So when we talk about paper clutter, if you want to do it, look to your left or your right and determine which pile you're going to deal with. You're not going to take that 2-inch pile and say, okay, this afternoon or this evening, I'm going to just race right through that. Are you kidding me? No. You're going to say, okay, I have 10 minutes. I'm going to put on my CD and I'm going to get at least maybe even 30 pieces of paper done. Now, people may say that's not enough. Let's start small. Let's get your toe in the water. Let's not drown you. One thing I used to do when I did my file cabinet, I would take, 40, 50 files. I put them in a box and I put them in the chair next to the fireplace. And I had a recycling bin next to that. What I did was I would watch the movie or watch a show with my husband, but every time a commercial aired, I would go through and sort through that file. A no-brainer. If you don't have the same appliance that coincides with the warranty, why are you keeping the warranty? Recycle it. Recycle it. So that's what I did, and it wasn't so much drudgery. I really liked it. And it was exciting.
I love that idea.
Actually, see, here in the winter's a great time to do this. You're sitting by a fire or having a glass of wine with the TV on or not, and you're just going through this. And then I just recycled all the paper. Anything that I didn't want eyes to see, I shredded. And my daughter used that paper for her rabbit's beddings. And some people have used it under their plants as mulch. I'm not so sure I like the idea of the ink going into the soil, but each to their own. That's okay.
Some great ideas. And I love your idea of short, be successful. It's that whole notion of you want the mastery. You don't want to overwhelming yourself further.
Yeah. And if you're going into a room and it's full of furniture, look to your left and do 1 foot against the wall. That's it. 1 foot. And if you keep working your way around, it's amazing what you can finally see.
Okay, a little bit more. Dorothy from New York was wanting just a little bit more, if you could, about mental clutter. What do you do with the to-do list? I think yeah, let me just stick with that question right now.
What's the to-do list? Yeah, we all have to-do lists. Some of us have a personal to-do list. I need to go get the shirts at the dry cleaner. I need to go to the market. I need to do errands for the kids, whatever. And then you've got your professional to-do list. Take your professional and say, to whom can I delegate one or two more of these tasks? Many times we feel as if we have to do it all. Not so much, Dory. We do not have to do it all. Even in our personal lives, we do not have to be superhuman. I used to joke that my kids, when I would ever do their laundry and fold the items and put it on their bed, they just went back on the floor. And it was a crumpled mess. So I said, you know what? I think I'm done with doing your laundry. And my kids were 12, 10, and 8 at that time. And they looked at me and said, you're kidding, right? I said, no, I'm not. I'm not. Because when I do the laundry and put it on your bed, it's your job to put it away. And if that isn't happening, why am I finding those clean clothes back in the hamper? So I said, I'm not doing laundry anymore. And I haven't done their laundry since they were 12, 10, and 8. And the first load came out a little pink, but they learned. And what they learned, what they would ask each other, who's gonna load a laundry to do? Can I share the load with you? If I put them in the washing machine and do it, would you be willing to dry it and take it out? It was mind-blowing watching this happen, but I had to step away. That for me was mental clutter. It was driving me crazy. And people can share jobs around the house. A young toddler can easily dish out the dog food. It may not go into the bowl exactly the way you want it, but they're helping. They're helping.
What about the situation where somebody's living by themselves, and so there's not somebody with the work stuff? There may be opportunities to hire someone to delegate, but what about the person that doesn't have the toddler or the kids or the spouse?
I would ask them to make a list of the things that they really do not want to do. It could be that they live in a house and they don't want to have to shovel anymore. They may not want to mow their lawn. If they don't want to do that, then they're going to have that expense of hiring somebody to do it. Now, there's going to be a compromise here because you can't have it all. You can't keep going out for dinner and complaining that you don't have any money to have somebody come mow or shovel your walkway. So at some point, you have to get real and say, if I want this done to me, then I need to cut back on my doing X, Y, and Z. There's also the barter systems. Somebody hates to cook. You know what? I'll just make extra this week and I'll give it to you. You can freeze it, but would you be willing to do X for me? I see that done a lot.
It's a great example.
Yeah, you just need to think out of the box.
Yep, and be creative with it, it sounds.
Yeah.
Let me, there are a couple other questions sort of with specifics and then wanting to ask a few other questions. One, just probably just maybe an easy answer, but what about how long we have to hold on to stuff? That sometimes plays into it, but there are limits. We just have to, in case you get audited, you have to keep things for how long?
Yeah, that changes. Let me see. It is in the book, but if you Google how long to keep on, if you were to Google taxes, how long to keep record, it's in there. It's also in my book too, and in the ebook, it's there. It's all there.
Okay, that's helpful. That was a question from Joyce, who's
Yeah.
in Florida.
Yeah.
Another,
And talk to that person
good idea. Yeah.
or your bank. Call your bank.
So in a sense, what I hear in your saying, get the information, is not using the sense that it has to be there forever as an indefinite way to put off doing it. It doesn't getting rid of what you don't need.
No,
Right.
no, not at all. And a lot of people want to collect all sorts of articles. That's great. I hope you've got a folder saying favorite recipes or great hobbies or something like that. Great craft, whatever it is. Because many times those little articles get put into a stack of paper. And if you want to look something up, thank God for the internet. We could look up everything. And sometimes those articles are updated.
Yep. It's so true. We can find so many excuses. I speak for myself. I don't speak for anyone else on the call, but I just know how easy it is to make the excuses of you need this actual paper. And what I'm discovering is these actual papers are turning yellow.
Yes.
And they're much easier to read if you just get the link and have access to them online.
Exactly. Yeah. It was interesting with photographs, and this is what I was procrastinating with. And many times for the holidays, the kids will say, Mom, what do you want for Christmas? I don't need anything, Dory. I really don't. The older I get, the more simplified I become. So what I have asked is I asked my daughter, Sarah, if she would be willing to go through my box of photographs with me, put them in chronological order. She did. That was 10 years worth of photographs. That was an enormous Christmas present for me.
Mm.
And that was a win-win. I got to spend time with her. We were laughing over these pictures. Laughing. And that's another thing when I was cleaning out Mom and Dad photo album. I went through and made piles of each of their friends. And I sent those pictures to Mom and Dad's friends with a note instead of just tossing them. And I have my sons, they would say, what do you want? I would love to have our yard cleaned up in the spring. So they would come and prune all the trees and rake up the yard. That was my Christmas present. It was awesome.
That is awesome. That is really great. And just thinking about how we can do that with friends too. It doesn't have to be just with friends, with partners, with whomever. Being able to give the gift of time and the gift of, and sometimes doing it with you. Absolutely.
Oh,
it's a win-win.
so much more fun.
Yeah. A few other questions I want to just incorporate. And then, so one is an observation that Carol from Michigan commented just that with her mom's estate, where they had an auction of some of the better pieces, and they realized when they looked at how much money they got, actually, they hardly made any money. And they just decided that it was just much better to just give it to friends where they knew it would be appreciated, because you don't, maybe there's some items where you would, but I think Carol's point is a helpful one that sometimes, it's just as you were saying at the beginning, Sallie, that giving it to somebody where it feels like it's really going to be wanted or helpful is very special.
I just went to a friend's house just this past weekend, and they had promised their mother that they would not throw out all her needlepoint books or cool book. I thought, Dory, I was going in seeing maybe 5, 6, 7 books. This is 3 walls full of books. It was daunting. So what I did was I said, I will pull out the oldest book, obviously leather bound, for 1808. And I said, I am curious to know what this could bring. So I'm going to an auction house down the street, and I'm just curious. They don't have a clue where to start. These 2 men are just overwhelmed. And I said, They promised her it wasn't going in a dumpster. I said, you guys have to figure out, do you want monetary value for this, or do you want to give it to friends and family? Now, you can have somebody come and they just clean out everything and they will auction it off in a lot. That can happen. But I asked them, how would it feel to you if we together could figure out, family and friend, who might want what? And you need to put an email out there. It's going to require, and it does, much more work. But for me personally, it was much more satisfactory and satisfying to know that something that belonged to my parents was really going to be wanted and cherished by somebody else. That made the difference.
Yeah, that
and
kind of
well
ties into this next question. Yeah, it's the time now versus time later. I know that. Anne from Boston says, how do you handle pre-cluttering? And for her, she says pre-cluttering is when your elderly family members are trying to give you their thing and you want to be helpful in their decluttering, but what do you do?
Here's something that my mom did. She asked me to go around and pick out something that she thought one of our sons would want as something as a graduation present for college. And I said, Mom, what are you thinking of? And she said, I want something substantial. I just don't want knickknacks. I want something substantial because then I can see his face when it's given to him. So I asked Corey, I said, if you can, in your mind's eye, go through Bam's apartment, what was something that you remember or would really love to have? And he said, I would love to have my grandfather's ship wheel that came off of a minesweeper in World War II. And Dad was captain of a minesweeper. And they gave it to him. And I am appreciative of that. Mom will also say, here, you take this, I don't want it. And I will go, Mom, I really don't want it. I will take it. And what I did was I had that box story in the back of my car and I would drive by Salvation Army or I would drive by Goodwill or Savers and know somebody would want it. I wasn't just tossing it. I wasn't tossing it. So instead of bringing it to my house, I would drive by and drop it off.
And not worry if the person came and saw that it wasn't there?
No, because I would say, Mom, I'm not interested, but I will take it off your hands. Mm-hmm. So I made it very clear that I wasn't interested, and if she didn't want to deal with it, then okay, I will deal with it, and I'm not going to feel guilty. Because I already told her I have no interest in that.
Karen from Minnesota asked, what do you think? Would it be helpful to do, and she puts in quotes, emotional review of the hard to let go of physical items, like maybe have folders of past projects or furniture and noting when you used it and then really could help try to decide, do I need to keep it now?
Now, it's very interesting because my daughter Sarah just called me the other day and she said, Mom, I have a job for you. And I went, oh boy, this is going to be good. She said, I don't know the history of what we have in our house. Some is great, some is not so great. I want to know the history because when you and Dad go, I don't know. And I thought, oh boy, this is one of the projects, Dory, that you go, oh, that's on the back burner. But you know what? I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that, and I guess I could do it with a video camera and talk my way as I do that. But I want them to know the history. They want to know the history. I wished I knew some of the items that came from my grandmother. I want the story. I think we all want that story. My husband's mother wrote down the history while she was dying with cancer of each of the items that were really sentimental, who they belonged to, about what year, who owned them, how they got to be where they are. And that's wonderful to have a story.
That is, I think, for the listeners to think about it. If people are still alive now and there's an opportunity to do something like that, and it can be helpful for them, for their sense of legacy too, as well as.
It is. And when we found out that Mom had lung cancer, she just took me by the arm and she said, okay, now this chest belonged to your grandmother. And I thought, here we go. But it was great. It was great. And I have a folder that says Mom's note on furniture. So I have that.
Yeah, that's great. One of the listeners just commented and saying, what a creative idea to have this video tour of items for legacy. So I want to add, I'm mindful of the time and knowing we're a little bit over. Are you okay with that, Sallie, for a few more minutes?
Here, cleaning out the heavy price of clutter. Here's some resources to donate or sell. Family, relatives, friends, neighbors, shelters. FYI, when it comes to towel, sheet, bedding, pet centers, veterinary clinics, love them because they will net the animal in all sorts of towels and sheets after surgery. Goodwill, Big Brother, Big Sister, library, school, university, camp, consignment, eBay, Craigslist, Salvation Army, churches, preschool, favorite charities, and other animal shelters. So there's a list of resources that you can donate and sell and or sell to. Remember, when you donate, you won't use it, you don't like it, and it doesn't fit. That's easy when it comes to clothes. And if you find that your physical surroundings can't take another coffee table, can't take another couch or standing lamp, you don't have to say, I have to have this. There are people out there that would love to have what you have. And again, my best friend through this whole process was freecycle.org. FREECYCLE.org. They are a great organization. And I had, as I said, my entire garage had paper bags full of things for individual people. And I just said when they needed to pick it up. And I always added a thank you note. Thank you for taking this. It means a lot to me. And because you're taking the time to come get it, it obviously means a lot to you. So for me, I needed that emotional connection to let it go. So I hope that helped, Dory.
No, I think that's very helpful. And I know there was another question about, and maybe just before the final takeaway from you, what for you was the hardest part? I mean, that may be a hard question, but what was one of the hardest part that you had in this process, and how did you?
The hardest part was looking at the whole and thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? I'm exhausted. How am I going to do it? And as I started, I thought, okay, I am going to separate this all by category. Clothes, furniture, kitchen items, chairs, lamp, paper. We had to go through paper clutter. When you're dealing with an entire house that doesn't belong to you or does belong to you, you get everything that's in it. And that's from rubber bands to paper clips. And FYI, I put a box together called office material. I didn't need 2,000 paper clips that my mom had, nor 3 packages of rubber bands or staples or staplers or pens or pencils. I wasn't willing to toss it, so I put an office material box and put it out there on FreeCycle. 2 veterans came. Both did not have limbs, and they needed those. You never know who you touch, but you make a difference in somebody's life.
Lovely to hear. Yeah, and I think it's true to think about this whole recycling, and something that you no longer want can be so meaningful to somebody else. And
Exactly. Old stationery. I took that to nursery school. They used paper. Magazine. I took those to the art department in the high school. They cut it up for collages.
mm-hmm.
It's a lot more work, but it is 5 times more satisfying.
I think that's very important to hold on to. This has just been wonderful, Sallie, and I'm so appreciative of your being here. And I do want to encourage everybody to get your book. But before we leave, Sallie, any last, it's just been wonderful. And I must say it so resonates with, I think, with all of us. And I know for myself personally, but with all of us. But any final kind of takeaways that you'd like to leave us with as we end for today?
I think, first off, I want to leave you with this, and it's something I put in the book. I believe if you stir up mindful clutter, you will have a recipe for a potent stew. By learning which herbs and spices to use, you create a gourmet feast. So be mindful of your clutter and only have what is useful to you, what touches your heart. And thank you, Dory, so much. This has been wonderful. I'm so glad I was able to share my experience and listen to these great questions.
Thank you so much again, and thank you all, everybody, for being here.
You've been listening to Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio with Dr. Dorian Mintzer. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show, listen to past episodes, or download our free retirement transition guide, visit revolutionizeyourretirementradio.com.